I'm Ali Velshi on Target tonight. Free to leave prison, but not free to stay in America. Thousands of inmates convicted of drug crimes are getting out early, but if you aren't a U.S. citizen, you're out of luck and you get deported. One family's bittersweet story. President Obama made history last summer when he traveled to Oklahoma and became the first sitting president to visit a federal prison. The tour provided a powerful symbol of the president's commitment to reforming the U.S. criminal justice system. That includes his administration's move to shorten prison sentences for drug crimes. Now, the result is that last year, more than 6,000 inmates were released from prison early, and tens of thousands more may join them in the years ahead. But here's where it gets complicated. Not all of those prisoners end up going home. About a third of the first 6,000 inmates whose sentences got shortened are not American citizens. And because of that, some released inmates were deported, while others are now sitting in detention facilities while they await deportation hearings. The result is a messy collision of America's imperfect immigration laws with its changing criminal law, and that's turning what might have been joyous reunions for some immigrant families into a reality that is far more bittersweet. Duarte Geraldino has the story of one such family whose newly free father cannot live in the same country as his son, who's a U.S. Marine.
A lot of my friends never knew this side of me. It was always on the hush.
Jessica Caro is talking about her family. They legally immigrated from the Dominican Republic in the late 1980s. In this picture, she's 8 years old with a slightly forced smile, standing in between her parents. Her mom is carrying her little brother Alex, who was born in New York City.
It made me a very reserved person. I shied away a lot from my friends.
She has decades of pictures like these. Her dad, Ramon Caro, is always wearing a beige shirt. That's because these family portraits were taken in a United States federal prison. In 1990, Ramon was found guilty of conspiracy to distribute crack cocaine and maintaining a place for narcotics distribution in New York City. He was sentenced to 30 years behind bars. It was a punishment that, according to court records, was meant to, quote, send a message to the community of which the defendant is a member that we don't tolerate drugs in New York and in American society.
He wasn't there for birthdays, graduations. He wasn't there for any of this.
He also was not there when his son Alex enlisted in the U.S. Marines, was deployed to the Middle East, or became a sergeant. None of it.
I don't think anyone deserves to be in jail for that long for a nonviolent crime.
It's not normal. It's not what happens in other countries.
President Barack Obama agrees with her. Her father is one of the first 6,000 federal prisoners whose sentences were reduced in 2015. It's part of an effort to reform the drug sentencing guidelines that led to the disproportionate incarceration of millions of Black and Hispanic people, creating severe prison overcrowding. But for Ramon, there's a catch. He is not an American citizen.
Well, one of the unique things about Ramon and about the 6,000 people that were released was that a federal judge actually looked at their case and did weigh their equities and decided they deserve a second chance, they deserve to be released early. And so he did look at all of the things that Ramon did and weighed that, but an immigration judge wasn't allowed to do the same thing.
Alyssa Wellick is the executive director of the Immigrant Defense Project. She says current immigration law has not kept pace with reforms in criminal law.
So right now, if you have any kind of drug offense, you're the number one, priority for deportation. You're likely to not get a lawyer, to not have a judge be able to weigh the circumstances of your case, including that your son is serving in the military. So for someone like Ramon, he really has virtually no chance of coming back.
In the fall of 2015, Ramon is transferred from prison to an immigrant detention center. In February of this year, deported to the Dominican Republic. We follow the Caros to Santo Domingo, where they wait for Ramon outside of a Dominican government processing center. For Alex, Jessica, and their mom, this will be the first time they hug Ramon as a free man in 26 years.
y viajó, usted viajó ahí.
At the family's first meal together outside of prison, Jessica keeps noticing similarities between her brother and father.
He's my dad's clone, which is like, I'm like, oh my God, like genes are so strong. Like he acts just like my dad. Every single thing that my dad does, he smiles the same way. He eats chicken the same. They don't touch the bone.
But it's been 26 years, and Santo Domingo is a very different place than the one Ramon left as a young man. He's 62 years old now.
I am a little worried because he still has his mentality of, being incarcerated, of, looking behind his shoulders or, kind of certain things he reacts, strongly about. I can kind of understand where my dad is coming from because when Alex first came out from boot camp, it was the same thing. He was kind of like with that mentality of like, he came home and me and my mother were like, we started crying because it was like, who are you?
It's the same question they're asking about Ramon, who, while free, will still be separated from his wife and adult children. Jessica and her mother both have careers in New York. The Marines are deploying Alex overseas.
Tú ya no puedes regresar a los Estados Unidos. You can never go back to the United States. And yet your son is defending that country. Is it ironic?
Que cada persona tiene que hacer su propio destino.
Everyone has his destiny, and if my son wants to be in the Marines, I support him. I can never be against him because he's American. I have nothing against America.
You are one of the people that they believe was sentenced too harshly. When you hear that, how do you put your life into perspective that you were made an example?
I think it's a good idea for Mr. President Obama about it to push change the law is good, It's only President Obama in 26 years in prison change the law, but another president never push about it to change the law.
You're prepared to be embraced by your family, but once they go back to the United States, what do you do here by yourself?
Well, I stay right here, and try study something, wait for my family when I come back, on vacation.
Do you wish you'd have been deported sooner if that was?
Yes, definitely. If that was the outcome, yes. Might as well would have signed the papers 10 years ago or 15 years ago and just, I think it would have saved our country a lot of tax dollars and having someone there sit there all this time and just ship them off anyways.
This is the 20th anniversary of the Illegal Immigrant Reform and Responsibility Act. It limits what judges can do in cases like Ramon's.
So often immigration will approach the person and say, look, you can sit in another immigration jail, in immigration jail for years trying to fight your case, but you really have no legal argument. And Ramon really had no legal argument, so he signed away his rights. But if the laws were different, he could have gone before a judge and tried to make his case.
For now, he wants to make good memories with his family. At his welcome home party, they took so many pictures.
What do you wish someone had told you as a little girl?
That it was nothing to be ashamed of, that there was nothing to hide, that, everyone has a story and this is my story.
Duarte joins me now. Duarte, tell me why she's saying she's not ashamed. What part of the story has changed for her? Is it because her father's free, it completes the story, or is it something more?
The fact that he's free reveals to her that she is not alone. So remember, when President Obama took this action, she realized that she is one of approximately 46,000 families in the U.S. Whose family members received sentences that were too harsh. And specifically, she's one of about 15,000 whose family members, while now free, have been deported.
So she realizes she's got two separate circumstances and she's not alone in either of them.
Exactly.
All right, we also heard from the immigration lawyer, the lawyer from the Defense Fund, saying that he waived his right, Ramon waived his right to go in front of an immigration judge. Tell me about this.
He waived his right because essentially while he was in detention facility, they said, yes, well, you could argue your case in front of a judge.
Yeah.
But the way existing law now stands, the judge can do nothing for you. His hands are tied, so you will be deported one way or the other. And after 26 years in prison, He didn't want to waste any more time in detention center. Now you have to remember, he was out for about 2 months, but not really, because he was in this detention facility. He passed his first Christmas there, New Year's, and then finally reunited with his family in a different country.
If he had been deported initially, what would have happened? Would he have served a prison sentence somewhere else? I mean, if this is the outcome, as Jessica said, it would have been better to deport him way back then.
Her belief is that it not only cost U.S. taxpayers millions of dollars to keep him in this country, but if he were in a different country, she could have had a sort of normal life. Now, the U.S. government will say if he was in fact responsible for any sort of conspiracy, they were trying to make sure that he couldn't be active in a different country. Jessica doesn't buy that. And she says, well, if the U.S. felt that, then perhaps they could have arranged some agreement with a Dominican prison. But that never happened. And the U.S. taxpayers were out of millions.
All right, Duarte, thank you for that. Coming up, propane, butane, and methane are making grape growers in upstate New York very sour.
We can't pick up our vines and move to another state.
A bitter battle over water, wine, and old salt mines is up next.
We're going to fight this until we die.